Hey everybody, and thank you for coming. This is going to be a Jobber mobile tutorial. So we're going to be going through a bunch of workflows out in the field. We're going to go over how the app works. And if you are watching this and you want a copy, I am recording it. So feel free to throw your email address in the chat window, and I can send you a copy down the line. Special hello to everybody here from Garden Nanny. I think there's a whole bunch of you guys called in today. So I'll be going into your workflow a little bit more specifically today. If you have any questions during this, feel free to type them in the chat window, and I'll try to work them into the presentation. But at the end, I will bring the phones back in, and we'll have some time for some Q&A for any questions that I haven't covered during this. So I'm going to start off with this really ugly PowerPoint I made that sort of goes over sort of the basics of Jobber Mobile. So basically, the important thing to remember with Jobber Mobile, or the app, is that the dashboard is the most important place. Every time we log in, we're going to be taking right to the dashboard. This is where we're going to see a list of all of the visits we need to do today, all of the tasks and reminders, and clicking on an item is going to give us more details. So I'm actually just going to bring the app up here real quick. So we'll pretend I'm on an iPhone here. The dashboard here, I can click the dashboard at any moment, and I can go back in and I can see everything that's just assigned to me. So in this case, I'm signed in as Justin's Landscaping Company. So if I'm a tech and I'm out in the field, I can jump in real quick and I can see all of the items that have been assigned to me. If I do want to see what's assigned to other people, if I have the permissions, I could open up the side panel and I could go into the tasks section. And that's going to let me see other people's schedules. But once again, that's only if I have the permissions. In fact, this user that I'm logged in as here right now has full permissions. So depending on how you set up your team members, they might not have access to the clients, they might not have access to quotes or invoices, but I'm mostly going to be focusing on the dashboard, completing tasks and doing timesheets. And no matter what people's permissions are, they're all going to be able to do these things. So whenever we click on an item, it's going to open up more information. In this example here, it looks like we opened up a visit for Homer Simpson. So on this screen, we're able to start a timer, we can get GPS directions, we can get more details, and I'm actually going to open that up on the app. So let's say I sign in, I go to my dashboard, I see an up-to-date list of everything I need to do, and maybe I want more information about it. Here actually, just because there are a bunch of people from Garden Nanny listening to this call, I set up a job that's going to be a lot like their recurring jobs. So when I log in, I see the item that I want to do, and I click on it, and it's going to open up that screen that's going to give me a few more options. I can start a timer, and this is going to log that time directly onto the job. This way, back at the office, they can look and get a breakdown of how long it took, and depending on if they're using QuickBooks Online, they might be pushing this information into QuickBooks for your payroll. But important thing with the timers is you can only run one timer at a time. If I had another timer going for an old job, and then I got to this job and I start the timer, it's going to kick me off the old timer and start logging time towards this job. So you won't actually always have to stop the timer. If you're just continuously running your timer through the day, all you got to do is make sure you're starting the timer when you start working on a new job. Right below that is this GPS directions button. If I click this, this is going to launch where my job is so I can find my way there. If I need more information about the client or the job, I can get more information by clicking on these tabs. And depending on your workflow, maybe the person in the office has put door codes on a client for you to find, or maybe there's an important note on the job. If you ever need that, you can click into these and go into those screens to get more information. In this case, we're going out. It looks like we're mowing the lawn. This job is set up so they're invoicing at the office at the end of the month. So there's really not much that I need to do. I can click Mark Complete, and then my job is done. If I want, I can stop the timer, and then I can go back to my dashboard, and I can see what I need to do next, which it looks like I'm going to Colleen Kelly's after this. So basically from the visit details, like I was saying, we can go into the client details or the job details. And this is where you're going to get a lot of your important notes and information like that. Maybe I'll actually go in there and show you an example. So let's say I go to Colleen Kelly, and maybe there's some important information I need. I click on the job that I'm going out to do. I'm in the visit screen. Instead of marking it complete, I'm going to get some more information first. So if I want, I could click on the client, and this will take me into the client's sort of home page. And every client in Jobber has kind of their own homepage, and if you had full permissions, you'd be able to see every invoice this customer's ever had, every note the customer's ever had, all their transaction history. And this has full permissions, so some of you logging in on the app might not see all the stuff I'm about to show you, but I'm going to click on Colleen Kelly here, and we'll see if there's any information. So I go in, and it looks like they're tracking the referral source back at the office, so this client came from Yelp. If I wanted to, I could see all of the past tasks and events for this client. And it looks like there are a bunch of notes actually on the client, so I can open them up, and it looks like a few notes have been uploaded, and it looks like there's also some pictures that have been uploaded. And this is a really useful feature of Jobber, is we can upload notes right into the app, and we can put them on the job level, or we could put them on the client level. One good thing to talk about with the people in the office is where they want the notes. Some people will store all their notes on the client level. Some people will store them on the job level. Chances are if you have a client with a bunch of different individual jobs, they might put them on the job level, whereas if most clients just have one contract, they might be storing that information on the client level. But either way, maybe we should leave a note on this job. So I'm going to go up to note actions here. And whenever we use the app, it's a lot like using the desktop version of Jobber in that we're often using the action buttons in the top right. Anytime there's something that we would intuitively want to do from a certain screen, we're going to want to use the actions button. If I'm on a client and I want to make an invoice for that client, I would use the actions button. If I made an invoice and I want to email it to the client, I would use the actions button. If you're ever not sure where to find something, you're always going to want to check the actions button. And in this case, I want to leave a note. So I'm going to click on actions, and I'm going to say new note. This note could be anything. Maybe it's special instructions for next time. Maybe I damaged something and I want to document it. I'm going to click on note. And I'm just going to leave a very basic note here and say this is an important note. So I'm going to save that note, and if I wanted to, I could snap a picture and upload it in here. If I had a PDF or any other kind of file, no matter what it is, I can put it in here as a note, and then they'll see it back at the office. So I'm just going to hit save on that note. And then maybe I'm done my work, so I'm going to complete the job. So I'm going to go mark as complete. And this job was set up to invoice after each visit, so I get a different prompt here. Jobber's going to ask me if I want to invoice the customer right now, or if I want to leave the status as requires invoicing so they can invoice for it back at the office. And in this case, I'm going to leave the status as requires invoicing, and I'm going to jump back to the office real quick here. So I'm going to mark that as complete, and then I'm actually going to jump back into Jobber. So I'm logged into Jobber here, and I'm actually going to go to the client page for Colleen Kelly. So this is what they're seeing back at the office. I'm going to click on Colleen Kelly. And if I go down, I'm going to see that note that I entered while I'm out in the field is now back at the office, visible to everybody else. And there's also a GPS coordinate because I'm using the GPS add-on. If I click on that, I'll see exactly where the worker was when they left the note. In this case, I'm just sitting in the office at Jobber here in the middle of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So any GPS coordinates I make today in the app are going to be right here. But if I leave a note in the office for my workers to see, that's where they would find it. So I could leave a note and say, in special instructions. And if I leave that note, when that worker's out in the field and they go into the client homepage for Colleen Kelly, they're going to see that note right there. So this is a really useful way to pass information back and forth. And some people put clickable links in here too. You might have Dropbox or Google Drive. Maybe you have checklists. Maybe you have schematics. Maybe you have manuals. There's a lot of different stuff people put in for notes. I find most of the time people use it for pictures, which is really useful. If you're out in the field, you can take a picture, throw it onto the client, and that way you have a record that you were actually there and you actually did what you said you did. We'll also notice here, back at the office, that job that I marked complete shows as requires invoicing. That job was set up to invoice after each visit. So if we don't invoice for it out in the field, Jobber is going to remember that, and it's going to keep track of it in the office. That way there's 0% chance of ever forgetting to invoice. Had I invoiced that job out in the field, it wouldn't say requires invoicing back at the office. So as long as the jobs are set up correctly, Jobber's always going to keep track of what jobs need to be invoiced and which ones don't. And I'm just going to jump back into the mobile presentation here real quick. Awesome. And I want to show you another thing here that's really important. Depending on how you set up the job, you're going to get different prompts each time. For everybody here from Garden Nanny, the only ones you're probably going to see are these ones here, which are for a one-off job. And then the other jobs that are set up as a flat rate, you're not going to get any prompts at all. Whenever you complete an item out in the field, it just lets you go on to the next thing because Jobber already knows that it's getting invoiced back at the office and you don't have to worry about it. For a one-off job, Jobber always needs to know what you're going to do next. For a one-off job, you might be going out once, you might be going out several times. When you complete the last visit for a one-off job, Jobber's always going to ask you what to do next. It's going to ask, do you want to close the job? And if you close the job, that job will automatically go into requires invoicing, so you could invoice for it or they could invoice back at the office. But once you close that job, there's going to be that reminder as a safeguard, so there's no chance of forgetting to invoice for it. Maybe you got to come back and finish up later, in which case you could go schedule next visit. You could put another visit on the calendar, and then when you go out and do that visit, it's just going to loop back to the beginning here, and then it's going to say, okay, now do you want to close the job, schedule another visit, or set status as action required? As far as set status as action required, this bottom option goes, it's basically just a glorified way of saying putting the job on hold. So what we're doing there is we're just going to say, I want to leave the job open. I don't want to close it, but I don't know when the next visit's going to be. And then back at the office, there's a special filter where they can see everything that's set as action required, and that way they can follow up on it later. So this will be really common if you're a tech and you have to wait for a part, you're not sure when the part's coming in, or maybe you don't have the permissions to schedule your own follow-up. If that's the case, you're going to put the job on hold, but most of the time with one-off jobs, when you're done, you're just going to close the job. It depends a lot on your individual company. The only other prompt that you'll see is if you have a job that's a recurring job and it's set up to invoice every single time you go out. If that's the case, when you mark the item as complete, Jobber's going to say, okay, do you really want to make the invoice right now, or do you want to set status as requires invoicing, which basically means they're going to do it back at the office. So maybe I'll show you a few examples of these, and I really want to focus on the one-off jobs because that's probably the one that most people watching this webinar are going to be seeing the most. So I'm actually going to schedule a one-off job from the office, then I'm going to go out in the field and I'm going to do it, and that way we can see the whole thing start to finish. So I'm going to make this job for a new client. I'm going to do this for, let's do this for Kyle Katz. So I'm going to go into Actions, and I'm going to create a new job. And this is the job that the tech's going to see in the field. And I'm going to call it One-Off Job Example for Webinar. So this job is going to happen today. I'm going to set this job to happen at 11 a.m. And I'm going to assign this to Justin, because he's the person who's out in the field that's actually going to be doing the work. And if I have any kind of important information, any kind of notes, I can put those in these custom fields. So I create the job at the office, and you know what? This job is going to be weeding, but I'm not going to put in how many hours of labor it's going to be yet because I'm going to let them do that out in the field. So now I'm going to jump out to the field here. Justin's out in the field. He's doing his work. He goes to the dashboard, and he sees the next job he needs to do is that one-off job example for webinar that I just made. So we can click on the item to get more information now. And if I wanted, I could start a timer, I could get GPS directions, I could jump into the client to get more details or the job to get more details. And when I'm done the job, I'm going to mark it complete. And we can also see what I'm actually doing here as well. Looks like I'm doing some weeding. So I'm going to go into the job details after I start the timer. And I'm going to see if there's any kind of notes. Looks like there's no notes that have been uploaded, but it looks like they put a PO number on it. So this is often where I'd go if I wanted to get a door code, if the people in the office are tracking that kind of information. And maybe I want to leave a note as well. So I'm going to click on Actions, and I'm going to go Add Note or Attachment. And just like I did before, I'm going to add a note, but this time I'm adding the note to the job. So I'm going to add a note here and say job is behind schedule. maybe I got out there late, so I'm actually going to have to reschedule another visit. And type I will need to come back later, and I'm going to hit save. So I'm going to go back into the job there, and maybe I get about halfway done. I didn't quite finish my work. I'm going to go in and actually mark that as complete. So I'm done my work. I'm going to stop the timer. And because this is a one-off job, Jobber's going to ask what I need to do next. So I'm going to mark this as complete, and Jobber's going to say, okay, do you want to close the job, schedule another visit, or leave status as action required? I actually need to come back and finish this job later because I didn't quite finish it yet. So I'm going to click on schedule next visit, and I'm going to type finish up. And if I wanted, I could add work items onto it and all those things. But I'm actually going to schedule this for today, just so it shows up on the dashboard again. And I'm going to assign this to Justin again. And I'm going to say this job can be done at any time. And I'm going to hit save. So back at the office, if they were to look at this job right now, it's still going to show as an active job. It hasn't been closed. It looks like Justin left a note saying job is behind schedule. I will need to come back later. You can see that he was sitting, in my case, in the middle of our office in Edmonton. So he's going to need to go up and finish that work. And we can see so far he's worked 1 minute. So we haven't really been doing a lot of clicking around in the app, but it's giving us a lot of information that's going to make life a lot easier for people back at the office. So I'm going to jump back into the app here, and I'm going to go to my dashboard. So whenever I go to my dashboard, I'm going to get that up-to-date list of everything I need to do, and there's that visit for me to finish up the work. So I'm going to go into it, and I'm going to start the timer. Looks like I already have a minute on the timer, so it's just going to add time to that. I could get directions, I could leave a note, get more information. And when I'm done the work, I'm going to stop the timer, and I'm going to mark the job as complete. Once again, Jobber's going to do another check. It's going to say, do you want to close the job, schedule another visit, or leave status as action required? I'm actually going to close the job because it's done. And now it'll be left for people back at the office. So I'm going to say close the job. And if I wanted to make an invoice right out in the field, I could do that quite easily by clicking on the Actions button. And I could generate an invoice right off this job. But back at the office, I just want to show you what they're going to see. If I refresh the page, they're going to see that the job now shows up as requires invoicing. And we've also put an invoice reminder right on the calendar. If we invoice out in the field, this job would just be archived. And that way they would know that we already took care of it back at the office. So in this case, they can make the invoice right from there. But maybe I actually want to make the invoice from out in the field, just because this is a mobile tutorial. So I'm going to click on the job and go Generate Invoice. And we have a whole bunch of jobs we have for this client. If I wanted, I could combine some of them on the invoice. In this case, I'm just going to invoice for the job I'm working on. This is a prompt that you guys probably won't see very often. I'm going to hit Create Invoice. And then I can see the item here. It looks like I didn't put any information in for weeding. Overall, the job took 6 hours, and we're charging $30 an hour for $180 plus $9 tax. So I'm going to create that invoice right out in the field, and maybe the customer actually gives me a check right on the spot. So once again, I click on the Actions button, and I'm going to say Mark as sent, meaning that I've sent it to the customer. If I wanted to, I could also email it to the customer. There'll always be an option to email it to them as well. But in this case, the customer is giving me a check right out in the field, so I'm going to mark it as paid. And notice that no matter what I'm doing or whatever I want to do, I'm going up to that action button in the top right. It's going to have all of my options that I could do for this invoice. I'm going to mark that as paid. And very important step, you always want to make sure you record the payment. This is extremely important because this is what's going to actually update the balance back at the office. And this way, if this client, Kyle Katz, a year from now is like, hey, what check number did I use a year ago? You'll have a record of it. So I'm going to record the payment for $189, and I'm going to say he paid with a check. I'm just going to throw in a check number there. if I want, I could automatically email a receipt to the client, and I'll do that as well, and I'll hit save. And if I were to jump to the office right now, Jobber's going to recognize that we already invoiced for the job, so it's going to be archived, and that way they don't accidentally think they need to make another invoice for it. We can see we have 2 time entries, and this invoice, because we're syncing with QuickBooks, will automatically be pushed over to QuickBooks the next time we sync. On top of that, it's also going to push the payment over as well if you're using QuickBooks. And once again, we can see the notes there. And back at the office, if I were to go to the kind of home page for the client, I'm going to see that invoice is on there, that payment's on there, and I can click on it at any time to get the payment terms. Some of you might be using our ePayments add-on, or maybe you're using our integration with Square. If that's the case, in your top right, in your Actions button, when you're out in the field, I'm just going to close this screen here, you'll have an additional option to charge credit card. Once again, that's only if you're using our ePayments add-on, but if you actually use the charge credit card option, you don't actually need to record the payment. You charge the credit card, and Jobber will do the rest for you automatically. Another feature that's really popular in the Actions button here is to collect signature. Not everybody uses this. Some people use it not even because they need it, just because the customers really like signing things. If you ever use that, you click on Collect Signature. The customer can sign right out in the field, and if you want, you could actually send them a signed copy of that invoice. You can also collect signatures on quotes, job work orders, and a few other areas, and Jobber will always give you an option to send a signed copy to the client. I'm going to hit save on that, and what that'll actually do is back at the office, it's going to create a brand new note. So if I were to go to that job, I'm actually going to see now at the very bottom, if I refresh the page here, if I go to the invoice, that invoice is going to have a signed copy attached to it. So if we collect a signature on a quote, it'll attach a signed copy right onto the quote. Same thing goes with jobs and invoices. Anytime you collect a signature, it's going to attach it on there right as a note. So maybe I'll show you a few more examples of a couple other workflows. I'm going to go into my Jobber app, and I'm going to go back to my dashboard, and I'm going to complete the rest of the work that I have scheduled for today. So I go to my dashboard. Once again, I always go to my dashboard when I want to get an up-to-date list of everything that I need to do. Looks like I have 2 more jobs here. I have a job for Jenny Kyle. This job has been set up, so we're invoicing at the end of the month. So anyone from Garden Nanny, this one would be similar to your recurring jobs. So I click on it, I go out, I start my timer. If I want, I can leave a note or check notes on the client or job. Looks like I'm just mowing the lawn today. And then when I'm done, all I have to do is mark it as complete. Because this job is set up to invoice at the end of the month, there's no other prompts and there's nothing else for me to do. I can just simply stop the timer and go on to my next job. In this case, it looks like my last job here, I have an invoice reminder, which isn't a job. I just need to remember to invoice Colleen Kelly for something I did earlier today. I'm going to do this Gina Phillips job, and it looks like this is called Recurring Job for Webinar. So I'm going to click it, and it looks like I'm also mowing the lawn. Maybe I'll leave a note just as like another example. So I'm going to click on Client. We can see all of the information we have. We have a door code, where the customer came from. Looks like we don't have any notes on this client yet. I'm actually going to leave a note. So I'm going to click on Create New Note. And I'm going to say Special Instructions for next time. And I'm going to hit Save. Back at the office, this note is now going to be on Gina Phillips. So whenever I look at their client record, I'll be able to see this note. And once again, that's also going to have a GPS coordinate of where I was when I made that note. So I'm going to go back to my job, and when I'm done, I'm going to mark it as complete. And it looks like this job was set up to invoice at the end of the month, so there's nothing else that I need to do. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up for some questions. I know there's probably a lot of specific things you might be wondering, so you'll be able to ask those questions. If you are listening in on your computer, you can also ask your questions in the chat window as well. For some of you that were There were a few questions earlier, so maybe I'll go through those first. If you are listening, please don't forget to mute your phone as well, just so we don't get any feedback. Somebody was asking about the team member permissions, which I kept hinting at. So to do those, if we go into the settings, and this is more for people in the office, but if I go into a team member, for example, I'm going to go into Justine's file here. I have a section of permissions. So we can see this person doesn't have access to quotes or invoices, notes. So this person would literally only see their dashboard, and they'd be able to mark their items as complete, but not edit them. So if you ever want to get a little bit more information about the permissions, jump into your settings section and have a look around, and you can kind of fine-tune what people are going to be seeing. Did anyone else have any other specific questions?
Oh. Was a question asked?
No, you can go ahead and ask.
I would like to know, how do you upload a photo to Notes?
Right. Good question. So I'm going to do one as an example. I'm going to go in, and it's actually the best way to think of it is it's a lot like uploading an attachment to an email. I'm going to go into this work here. I'm going to go into the client. I'm going to click on Action, and I'm going to go Create New Note. And if I wanted to, I could leave like a text note in here. If I want to upload a picture, if I'm actually using the app, this is just like a simulator, but there'll be a button that lets you take a photo right on the spot. If you have a photo that you already took, we could click on Attach File, and we click on Choose File, and then we just pick the file off of our device, and then we hit Save. And then that picture will now be attached to that job or client or wherever you have added it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm going to go over that one more time with the mute on, just because we are getting some feedback here.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So for anyone who is listening, definitely make sure you are muting your phone, just because we are getting a bit of feedback. But I'm going to upload another note here. So I'm going to go into Gina Phillips, and this time I'm going to add a note to the client. I'm going to click on the Actions button, and I'm going to say Add New Note. And if we wanted, we could type in a text note, but we might want to actually upload a picture. If we're actually on an app, there'll be a button right now that'll actually let us take a picture right on the spot, but you might have already taken the picture. If we click on Attach Files, best way to think of it is it's exactly the same as if we were uploading an image onto an email. So I can click on Choose File, and Jobber is going to pop open this screen, and this screen will allow me to select a picture, and I'm going to select Choose, and it's going to upload it. This is actually a PDF that's going on here. So it's going to upload that document. It could be a picture, and that is now saved back at the office. So back at the office, they could open up that picture, and there'll be a GPS coordinate on it. Once again, I go to the job, the invoice, the client. I go to wherever I want to actually upload a note, and then I use the Actions button in the top right, and then I'm going to say Add Note. And then once I'm there, I'll have a prompt that lets me take a picture right on the spot. Or if I prefer and I already took a picture, I can attach a file the exact same way that I would attach an attachment to an email. Somebody has had a really good question. What if the client doesn't have an email address? Will we just invoice later with a printed invoice? So there's a few different ways that can play out. Some people will have printers out in the field. If you do have a printer out in the field, you could print it out right in the spot. But if they don't have an email address, what people will often do is they might be just showing it to the customer and collecting payment. Or what you can also do is make an invoice, but leave it as a draft. And if you leave that as a draft back at the office, they're going to notice that it hasn't been sent to the client yet. Not to get too much into the office stuff, but it's really good to know that invoices always start as a draft. And they're not a live invoice yet. if we say that the invoice is due in 15 days, it's not going to actually start counting it down yet. We could still go into a draft and we can edit it. We can change anything we want. We could put a discount on it, change the tax rate. It won't actually become a live invoice until we either email it to the client or we mark it as sent. So if we're out in the field and they don't have an email address, but we want to say, okay, now you have 10 days to pay, we need to mark that invoice as sent. And whether we email it or mark it as sent, it's then going to jump into this awaiting payment bucket. And it's going to start actually counting down how long it is until it's actually late. Within that amount of time, hopefully they will have paid. But if they don't pay, it'll show up in this past due bucket, and you'll know that. And let me show you an example of that. So I'm going to jump back into the app here, and I'm going to say I'm out doing some work for Gina Phillips. I make an invoice. So I'm going to click on Actions, create a new invoice. Looks like we have a job here that is outstanding, so maybe we'll make an invoice for that. So this invoice is for $110. If I wanted, I could add line items onto it. And when I'm done, I can hit Save. Oh, it looks like I actually have to put a name on the item. So I'm going to say I'm doing prune tree. And for this item, I'm going to say I'm doing fertilizer for $40. And then I'm going to hit Save. Okay, so back at the office, I'm actually going to see this invoice number is going to jump up one. So now I actually am going to have 27 draft invoices. So meanwhile, out in the field, I have my invoice, and it's currently a draft. If I wanted, I could email it right to the client. This client doesn't have an email address, and they're like, you know what? Can you print it off and mail it to me later? So if I were to do that back at the office, they would actually make it so it isn't a draft anymore. But basically the choice I need to make is, do I want to mark it as sent now? If I mark it as sent now, it's going to start counting down the terms. So if I said they had 15 days to pay, as soon as I hit mark as sent, Jobber is going to consider it a live invoice. And I'm actually going to hit mark as sent. And then if I were to go back to the office, this invoice is actually going to jump from a draft invoice over to being a live invoice. And we'll just see Jobber take a second, and then that should jump over. Perfect. So it went from a draft invoice, and now it's a live invoice. And if the customer did want to pay out in the field, I do have to make it a live invoice first. Now that it's live, if I wanted to, I could mark it as paid, and maybe they give me cash, or maybe they give me a check, or maybe back at the office, I'm going to print that off, and I'm going to actually email it to them. So there's a few different options there, and depending on your workflow, it'll be a little bit different, but no matter what the workflow is, you should be able to do it with the program. I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to bring the phones back on in case anyone else has any other questions. And once again, a few people have requested a recording. If you want a recording of this, definitely throw your email address in the chat window. And my email address is david@getjobber.com. I'm going to type it in there too. Anytime you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Some of you might have been using Jobber for a long time. Some of you might have actually never used Jobber, and you might be interested in trying it. No matter what, send me an email. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll make sure I connect you with the right people. I'm just going to bring the phones back on here real quick. Awesome. Did anyone have any other questions or anything that you wanted me to go over?
I have a question regarding Nanny. David, what happens if you have what happens if you have 4 separate workers at one site? Do you delegate someone who goes back and forth with Jobber, or do we each keep track of our own time and our own effort?
Right. Your best bet there would be to have one person who's kind of in charge of marking it complete. Because what will actually happen is if we go out in the field and there's a bunch of people assigned to the same thing, maybe one of them marks it as complete. I'm just going to go to my dashboard here. And when they mark it as complete, everybody else will also see that it's been completed. So it can only be marked complete once. But as soon as somebody marks it as complete, everybody else will see that it's already completed. And if they were to click on it, it's actually not possible to complete it more than once.
So, but
So usually there'll be
here's
like
the
a
other.
team leader who's in charge of that.
There's another aspect to that question, I believe, in terms of time, in terms of timesheets. Maybe 4 people are on one job site, and then they're going to split off into different job sites. Each person is responsible for his or her time. Is that correct?
Do you work the cosmetics area? I'm looking for a lipstick that might maybe in color be close to this.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
I haven't found anything over there. Okay.
Okay, we're getting a bunch of delay, so I'm just going to mute this again, actually, and then I'm going to talk about the timesheet here for you guys. Okay, perfect. So, for yeah, sorry I'm jumping back and on with the mute here, but okay, so let's go into Brenda's question a bunch here. So if I were to look at a job back in the office, every single individual person is going to have their own timesheet entries on it. So if I had several different people putting time on it, it'll actually tell me which people have which time. So I'll be able to see, Justin worked 1 hour, Justine worked 2 hours, because people might be working different amounts of time, but it's still going to total their time together. So every person basically is going to be doing their own timesheet entries. So it's up to each individual person to start the timer. If people need to put in times manually, and I want to go over this too because this is something we were talking about before the webinar, sometimes you might want to put time in as a category. So you might not necessarily want to log time towards this visit. Maybe you want to record your lunch time, or maybe you're driving to a work site. So I can't use the quick timer buttons for this. What I'm going to do is if I go to my dashboard, I'm going to see there's a section for timesheets, and I can use this to add timesheet entries that might not be related to any of the visits on the calendar. I'm going to click on timesheets, and if I want, I can click New Timesheet, and I could either enter the time manually or I could start a timer. But either way, it's actually going to let me pick any of my active jobs for that to be towards, or I can have categories. So you guys might have a category for lunch, you might have a category for transportation, breaks, restocking supplies, cleaning the shop time. Any of those categories that have been added in the settings will show up in here, and you can add your time for transportation. So I can make a timer specifically towards transportation. Because I'm doing this for transportation, this isn't going to show up on any individual job. But if I were to look at my timesheet report back at the office, or my area where I can see all the different timesheets, I'll be able to see it broken down for each person day by day. So this actually gives us a look at everything that Justin has done today. And we could also look at everything Justin's done this week, and it'll break it down by category. For the most detailed possible timesheet report, we have a report in our management section. And if I go in there and I just scroll down to my timesheets, this report is really useful because we can filter it for any time range, and it'll give us the total hours. If you're using QuickBooks Online, you're probably using them for payroll. If you aren't, this might be what you're using for payroll, and this is a really good way to get a really fast total of how long people have been working. And this report will also give you a lot of details. So some people will actually download this, and all of our management reports can actually be downloaded, and then you can work with it in a spreadsheet. And that's a really good way to get a little bit more in-depth with the information.
Okay. Well,
Okay, did that help, Brenda, or did you want some more details?
Yes, it did. Did that help? Yeah, I think so. Is it clear? You're going to email this recording. Do you have any
Awesome.
other
So maybe what I'll do now is I'm going to end the webinar. I could give you a call, Brenda, if you want.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll just leave this open, and I'm probably going to close the screen down, but I'll give you a call right away here, and we can go over some more stuff. But thanks to everybody that came, and if anybody wanted a recording, once again, you can put your email address in the chat window, and it looks like a whole bunch of people already requested one, but I'll make sure I send you a copy afterwards. Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody, and we'll definitely talk to you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Take care.
A lot of questions. I mean, I think it's a good program for you, but I don't know how much work we're actually doing.
Say, as far as invoices and all that, that's pretty much
Yeah.
your,
Yeah.
our concern
It's
mainly.
actually Kurt's concern.
So mainly the part that we have to get the notes, and if there's a picture attachment, which I just figured out, I know how to do that. But that's,
This is all about the phone. I'm interested in the thing on your desktop.
Here he is. Hello, David.
yeah, I tried it.
Very well. If I put the phone on speaker, can I close the join me window now? It's chirping. Exit.